Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 9 of Global Business. This chapter, in this video, we're going to talk about the various formulations of a national trade policies, how nations formulate their trade policies with other nations. Politicians over time, economists, business people have argued that there should be government policies regarding international trade. The two principal issues that have shaped the debate are: number one, whether a national government should intervene to protect the country's domestic firms by taxing foreign imports or constructing other trade barriers. And the second argument being whether a government should help domestic firms increase their foreign sales through export subsidies, government-to-government negotiations, and or other forms of guaranteed loan programs. In North America, the trade policy debate has focused on two issues, or two policies: whether the government should promote free trade or whether the government should promote fair trade. Under free trade, it is implied that a government should exert minimal influence on exporting and importing decisions with regards to private firms. Fair trade, however, which is sometimes called managed trade, suggests that government should actively intervene to ensure that domestic firms' exports receive an equitable share of foreign markets and that imports are controlled to minimize losses of domestic jobs. All right, some fair traders argue that the government should ensure a level playing field on which foreign and domestic firms can compete on equal terms. So it's kind of socialistic type of view. Everybody gets a piece, level playing fields. Everybody leaves the field with a trophy, kind of a thing. All right, it's fair trade as opposed to free trade, where free trade people feel that government should have minimal influence on both exporting and importing. The argument for free trade follows Adam Smith's analysis as discussed in Chapter 6. In Smith's view, a country and its citizens are better off when self-interested individuals, regardless of where they reside, exchange goods, services, and assets as they see fit. However, most politicians and policymakers believe that under certain circumstances, deviation from free trade is appropriate. So these deviations include national defense, infant industry, maintenance of existing jobs, and strategic trade theory. So for industry-level arguments, which rationalize some form of trade intervention, include national defense, infant industry, maintenance of existing jobs, or maintaining existing jobs, and strategic trade theory. We're going to go over each one of those. In a national defense argument, has been used as a reason to support government protection of specific industries. Because world events can suddenly turn hostile, we all know that in this world we're living on. Because things can turn hostile, to a country's interest, the national defense argument holds that a country must be self-sufficient when it comes to raw materials, machinery, and technology. The national defense argument appeals to the general public because they're concerned that his country will be pushed around by other countries if they lose control of these resources, and by many special interest groups who manipulate this argument to protect their own industries from foreign competition. Under Alexander Hamilton, the first U.S. Secretary of Treasury, he articulated an infant industry argument in 1791. He feared that young nations' manufacturers would not survive because of fierce competition from more mature European firms. Thus, he fought to impose tariffs on numerous imported goods to protect certain U.S. firms from foreign competition until they could become fully established. His philosophy has been adopted by countries worldwide. All right, so you look in infant industries, you look for government protection because you're small. You need to get your legs underneath you. Governmental nurturing of domestic industries will ultimately lead to a comparative advantage and a powerful economic under a powerful economic development strategy. All right, so once an industry, however, is granted this protection, one of the problems is once an industry is granted certain protections by the government, it may affect themselves as they get into old age. They may want to continue with that protection so they can continue to grow. Okay. The third argument is maintaining of existing jobs. Well-established firms and their workers, particularly in high-wage countries, are often threatened by imports from low-wage countries. To maintain employment levels, firms and its workers often petition the government for relief from foreign competition. All right, government officials may provide assistance in the form of, and they do this in the form of tariffs, quotas, and other trade barriers. When firms and labor union officials plead for government intervention to help to compete internationally, economists claim that such intervention ultimately harms the economy, though. All right, they base this claim on the classical trade theory of absolute advantage and comparative advantage. These trade theories, however, assume that firms operate in perfectly competitive markets of the sort that exist only in economic textbooks. All right. This figure here shows the payoff. It shows the payoff matrix for two firms. All right. This is a payoff matrix. I want you to just look at this. If Toshiba decides to develop the plant design and decides to develop the plant design and Areva decides not to, see in the lower area there, Toshiba profits by $10 billion while Areva makes nothing. If Areva decides to develop the plant design and Toshiba does not, Areva profits by $10 billion while Toshiba makes nothing. If neither firm chooses to develop the design, they both make nothing. If both decide to develop the design, both will lose $1 billion because the market is too small to be profitable for both of them. In this situation, neither firm has a strategic strategy that it should follow, regardless of what its rival does. Okay. Suppose now that the French government learns that the large profits that one of its country firms could earn if the firm were the sole developer of the new plant design. If France were to offer Areva a subsidy of $2 billion to develop the new nuclear technology, the payoff matrix would change to this of 9.2. Because of the subsidy, Areva payoff is increased by $2 billion if and only if it develops the technology. With the subsidy, Areva will develop the technology regardless of what Toshiba does, because Areva makes more money by developing than not developing. If Toshiba chooses to develop, Areva makes nothing if it does not develop, and $1 billion if it does develop. If Toshiba does not develop, Areva makes nothing if it does not develop, and $12 billion if it does develop. Thus, Areva will always choose to develop. But if Toshiba knows that Areva will always choose to develop, then the best strategy for Toshiba is not to develop. What has the French government accomplished with a $2 billion subsidy, that you ask? It has induced Areva to develop the nuclear power plant technology, and it has induced the Japanese firm to stay out of the market. Okay? So, very influencing. It also has succeeded in allowing the French firm to make $12 billion profit at a cost to French taxpayers of only $2 billion. All right? So, this is one of the other theories behind protectionism, behind excuse me, I still have a cold. All right. Sorry, we need to continue. I'm sorry about that. All right. Rationale for trade intervention national trade policies. Policies just discussed address the needs for individual industries. However, a national government may also develop trade policies that begin by taking an economy-wide perspective. All right. After assessing the needs of the national economy, the government then adapts industry-by-industry policies to promote the country's overall economic growth. Okay. All right. An important policy of many governments, particularly those of developing countries, is economic development. All right. International commerce can play a major role in economic development programs. Some countries, such as Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, base their post-World War II economic development on exports. According to this export promotional strategy, a country encourages firms to compete in foreign markets by harnessing some advantage the country possesses, such as low labor costs. Other countries, such as Argentina, Australia, India, Brazil, adopted an import substitution strategy after World War II. This strategy encourages the growth of domestic manufacturing by erecting high barriers to imported goods. Many multinationals responded by locating production facilities within these countries to avoid the cost resulting from high trade barriers. Okay, so the two various economic development plans that were imposed by emerging countries after World War II: the export promotional strategy and the import promotional strategy. In many countries, the government plays an active role in managing the national economy. Often, an important element of this task is determining which industry should receive favorable government treatment. Bureaucrats within Japan's Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITA, for an example, identified emerging technologies and products, and through subsidies, public statements, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering, encouraged Japanese firms to enter those markets. All right, so the industrial policies that they used identified domestic industries that are critical to the country's future economic growth, and therefore formulates programs to make them more competitive. Ideally, industrial policy assists the country's firms in capturing large shares of important growing global markets. All right, this is the Japanese model. Many experts, however, do not view industrial policy as panache for improving the global competitiveness of countries' firms. They argue that government bureaucrats cannot perfectly identify the right subsidiaries or the right industries to favor under such policy. Opponents of industrial policy also fear that the choice of industries to receive government aid will depend on the domestic political clout of those industries rather on their potential international competitiveness. Okay. So why do national governments adopt public policies that hinder international business and hurt their own citizenry overall? According to public choice analysis, special interest groups are willing to work hard to promote their interests that the general public is willing to work to defeat policies unfavorable to its own industry. All right. In addition, as a result, domestic trade policies don't stem from a vision of the country's international responsibilities. Rather, they are shaped by a mundane interaction of politicians trying to get elected. All right. Let's move on to the difference between tariffs and non-tariffs and other non-tariff barriers. Actually, we're going to do this in another second video. So we'll pick up this from a second video. Take a break, relax, shake it out a little bit. That was a lot of information. So I'll post another video regarding Chapter 2, picking it up from the barriers to international trade. Thank you.